Good evening, and welcome to Space Cities, a program about astronomy, ancient wisdom, and space exploration. I'm your host, Steve Nash, and our guest is Robert Evans.
How's it going?
Very good.
I'm glad to be back on your show tonight.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
You have more photographs to show us?
Oh, yes, I do. A lot of these photographs, they're the average people, they look at these things and they say, oh, they're all fakes, they're camera defects, they're hot shots. I had to really investigate these things, triple investigate them, because when I first started doing research on these, I had a hard time saying they were real, because these were just weird looking, things. Here's the camera looking at the sun, because they're all SOHO or different satellite cameras. And when I started seeing these images, they were something I'd never seen before. So I had to really investigate them. And years ago, about 2008, 2009, I was very clear in my thinking that they were real, okay? Mm-hmm. So what I did was, then I started to go forward, and I actually had several of them, these images photo analyzed by a friend that lived down in, worked down at Moffett Field, California. Mm-hmm. And what else is down there? NASA. Okay, he never said where he worked, but
could work in the black box too.
He could, yes. So I started going through all of SOHO's little-known web pages. One of them is the called Hot Shots. Now this web page, what they do is they clearly show all these defects going back from 2012 back to 1998. Mm-hmm. So I went on each and every page looking for any of these images, because if they were there, I couldn't show them anymore. Mm-hmm. And I went through each and every one, nothing. It was like they were ignoring these things. So I went into them even further because they had camera defects. There was a page they called "Make Your Own Flying Saucer" type thing, and actually had a nice little image that had been blown up because when certain energy parts hit the cameras, they enlarged the pixels really bad. And I went through everything they had.
So they sort of white out the pixels.
Exactly. Yeah. And I went through everything they had. I couldn't find any of these images. Now, I would have thought NASA, trying to cover their own butts, they would have had numerous of these images in there saying, just ignore these, they're camera defects, they're this, they're that. And I kind of forgot about them for a while. I was finally discovered by Ivy West and Lori and Fenton. Mm-hmm. Lori and Fenton runs the MUFON chapter up in Petaluma, California. And she saw the stuff I was doing, because the first person that got a hold of me was the third phase of the moon, the two cousins. I think they're cousins or brothers. And they had me do a video with them. Then John Elias, or Dr. John Elias down in Southern California, he said, hey, come on my show, we need to talk about these things. And it gradually went to Ivy West and Lori and Fenton, and then she actually had me as a speaker at UFOCon 213 while I was actually showing these images right on the screens. Mm-hmm. And we actually kind of blew away a lot of people's minds, because, I mean, here you had well-known UFO hunters and people who wrote books and stuff, and they saw these images, and I was taken aside privately after I had spoke, and they were saying, "Do you realize how big that ship is?" I said, "No, it looks large." And it turned out that the ship was almost the size, if not larger, than our planet Earth. That's how big these things were. And that got me into talking to more and more people over time. I've actually been on the Dr. Sasha Lesson with his radio show and his wife Janet Lesson. And we have finally nailed these things down. They are Anunnaki. They're exact because they match exactly the ships that were seen on huge wall carvings over in the Middle East from the Zoroastrian religion. And they carve these huge wall carvings to show this god, an Anunnaki god.
So they're bird-like in shape then?
No, you have the Anunnaki god standing in front of what looks like a big flying machine behind of him. But it's actually, it looks like a huge bird's wings, but no one ever notices the landing gear, where you have two poles coming down with round wheels. And that huge shape matches exactly the images that NASA has been ignoring. These Anunnaki starships are coming in every day.
Probably not interested.
Or they're told not to talk about them. So that's the kind of stuff I've been putting together. At the show, we only showed certain types, but the stuff I want to show you guys tonight, this was a special one that came in I think it's 2003, where another NASA extreme ultraviolet camera, the same one that found the huge ships I've been seeing, saw this one ship sitting alongside the sun. And we had it enlarged up. And it'd be kind of interesting to see, we can actually show the images to the people here and we'll talk about them.
Are these photos still available online?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Because if you go to the SOHO webpage, the real-time data, and I can tell you exactly what camera it was. It was the SOHO EIT-304 satellite camera. And it caught this one ship sitting right next to our sun, but it was actually firing a beam down through the bottom part of our sun. So it was really close, but it was doing something. And we had this one ship enlarged up, and we had it filtered, and yes, it was real. And be interested to see if we can.
Okay. We have some
Yes.
photographs coming up.
That's the web pages that anyone can go to see whether they're hot shots or for camera defects. That's the web pages, and you can see exactly what I had to research to make sure these things were not photoshopped or fakery. And that's the one where you can make your own flying saucer, where they look at the images from the cameras that would actually be kind of overexposed. And I had to make sure that none of these images were in that files either.
Yeah, that's good.
This is the SOHO make your own flying saucer type web page, where it shows the images right there. You can see how they've been enlarged up and overexposed because certain parts of the camera would be affected, and none of my images even look anywhere close to those.
So is this the official SOHO website?
Yes.
Okay.
But they're little known web pages part of it. NASA research down there in Moffett Field, California, where this one gentleman said he worked, but not for NASA. He just said Moffett Field. And there's a nice photograph showing Moffett Field off to the left. I think that's where the NASA part is.
Yeah, on the...
And that's the one side right there. All
that's
that.
the blimp hangar.
Yes. Oh, yeah. That's a huge piece right there. Okay. So this, and we still have a problem. We still can't see the image of the ship off to one side. It was from oh, it was 2006. Okay.
Is that the little white spot?
No, it's off to the left of the.
To the left.
There
There
she
we go.
is, right there. Yes. So we had that thing. You can see there's a beam coming straight down from the ship, which hits the lower part of the sun, and everyone was kind of wondering what were they doing. I mean, yeah, and this is an immense ship. It's far larger than anything we could ever build. So we had these. There it is. It's filtered, and you can still see the beam. It's actually greenish in color, and you can see the ship. Okay. This one was filtered to make sure all the stuff was real, where it hadn't gone anywhere. So we started to enlarge in on the ship itself. And there it is. Okay. On this one filtering, you can see the ship. You can see where it's firing the beam right through the sun. So you can see part of the ship. There's a red spot right there. That's where the beam seems to be coming from. So, there we go. It's filtered a different type here. Now in this image here, you can barely see where the ship it's firing the beam, and it has like wings on both sides of right there.
That's very interesting.
And this image right here,
Is
if
this
you
ultraviolet? You don't know the type of filter?
I'm not sure. He would not tell me what kind of filtering he was doing. He wanted to keep it in-house in a sense. This one filtering here, you can see that there's rings around the ship. And these rings are actually showing deflector shields. So just like Star Trek, there's like 3 rings going around that ship. And there's the ship again. This time we're actually looking more towards where the heat is on the ship. What's cold is actually the greenish and blue, and the red is where the heat of the ship is. This gentleman, this one person, was able to take this thing down to the heat parts, and he could actually show me where the crew would be in this ship, all working from that one image. Now, you can't do this using Photoshop or anything else.
Yeah, so the crew quarters would have to be on the left and the right wing.
Exactly. You can see right there in the center. So the sides of the ship, they're really cool. They're being kept cool by whatever machinery they have in there. And right there at the bottom, you can see that's about where the crew are starting to focus in on. Because he took it all the way down to the heat pixels. Now, I don't know anyone that can do that. That gives a good idea, where he worked.
Yeah. I don't know if anyone of that type of equipment in their attic or their living room.
Now, right here, we're looking at the 2 parts of the hull. At the lower part, you're starting to see where it's all red around it, meaning hot, stay away, and it gets yellow down to a bluish green type. That's where the crew would be. That's where all the working spaces would be.
They must have some serious radiation shielding.
Yes, and here's the final image right here, where you can actually see the green areas. That'd be the coolest spots for the crew and whatever, and that's the entire ship that's been enlarged up. So we know from these images that there were living beings on this one ship. Okay, so here is a direct thing showing extraterrestrials coming into our system with this immense ship.
I wonder what their power source is to get that close to the sun and then have to leave.
I have no idea.
That's
A lot of the images we're going to be seeing now, they're actually taken from the South Pole telescope, and that's what's in the picture right there. Nibiru and the alien space probes orbiting our sun. Okay, back in 2007, there was a really nice part that was a picture that was, there were about 4 or 5 different websites that you could go to, and you could look at this. You could look at the stars around our sky. There was the I can't remember all the names, sorry, but this one here, this one image looked really good, and I couldn't really see it because it was all a huge white mass, the part that was on the web page. So I sent this sky coordinates into a friend of mine that worked at NASA. Mm-hmm. And the gentleman sent me this image back. Okay, this image shows 5 orbiting planets around something. Now I was told this is a DSS image. This is basically what you would see looking through a telescope, a regular telescope. Okay, so you can see the pattern all these planets actually have in that image right there.
Okay. So it's a deep space telescope. And
yes. Now here is an image that was leaked from the South Pole telescope by 1 or 2 people. This is a computer enhanced image but using false color. And in the center there you see what I will tell you is a brown dwarf star. Okay, NASA had imaged this stuff, so now we know that our system is binary. Our sun is the main star and its companion is a brown dwarf.
Well, theoretically, the orbits of the planets around the sun are elliptical, which would mean our sun is at one focus and there would have to be something at the other focus.
And that was exactly what Dr. Robert Harrington tried to tell NASA and the people back in the early 90s. He knew from his research that Nibiru went through our system at about a 40-degree angle. Nibiru, meaning the planet of the crossing, the planet that the Anunnaki lived on, or Planet X, actually worked on an orbit. So it was orbiting something. Mm-hmm. Okay? Now those images clearly show that we actually have another system that interacts with our system. Here's our orbital eclipse.
Plane of the ecliptic.
Planet, yeah, all the planets in our system are like this. This system comes in through like this. Okay? All the planets in our system are rotate counterclockwise. What's in this system orbits clockwise. Okay? They knew about this back in 2007, 2008, and that's why it was deliberately leaked from the South Pole telescope. See, it's not really a telescope where you can physically look through the screen, through the eyepiece. It uses infrared technology and microwave technology, and that's what we're going to be seeing in the next couple of photographs coming up.
Okay, here we go.
This is an infrared image showing the brown dwarf sun right there in the center, and you see 5 planets orbiting around it. Now, if you remember that nice black and white image that I received from my friend at NASA, it still showed these 5 things in almost the exact type of pattern as they orbit around their brown dwarf.
So there are only 5 planets around the dwarf?
No, there are at least 6. And when this was taken back in 2007, 2008, planet number 6 was starting to orbit through our system, because it goes through on the right-hand curve going clockwise. somewhere between Jupiter and Mars, right where the asteroid belt is.
Okay.
Now this is a microwave image showing Nibiru itself. Now it's a little bit difficult to understand because I've only just recently started to understand what these things are actually showing, but they're actually showing that Nibiru is solid. You can see the microwave seeing it from one example, and you see a roundish look to it. And this is a different type of microwave image, and this is also showing that yes, it's there, it's real, it's solid.
It's not hollow, huh?
No.
Okay.
Okay, this is the part that very few people know about. This was all leaked by a high-ranking Jesuit priest who was sent out from the Vatican in the early 2000s to talk to an Italian reporter. His name was Christopher Barbato. He was told everything that the Vatican knows about aliens. Okay? This all goes back to 1954. What this image here shows that a highly advanced space probe was built at Area 51 from humans and ETs, extraterrestrials. It was sent out past Pluto to meet up with the planet Nibiru. It orbited planet Nibiru, videotaped it, must have had, hey, how's it going, you know, talking, whatever, and then it returned back in less than a month.
Oh.
Okay. You know, they weren't using the NASA technology, which takes, you know, God knows how many years just to get to Mars. You know what I'm saying here. So it came back and it downloaded all of its information to a Jesuit base on a HARP facility up in Alaska. And that was where that part came from. The Jesuit gave Barbato a small video showing exactly what Nibiru looked like. They had a slight schism there in the Vatican. Parts of the Vatican didn't want the general public to know about these aliens. The Jesuits did. And that's why the Jesuits were put in charge of all of the observatories around the planet. They actually have an observatory over in Arizona.
Yes.
Run and manned by Jesuit priests. They have their fingers in all the other observatories, especially the South Pole Telescope. And that's where all this stuff is starting to slowly kind of leak out. You know, our current Pope is Jesuit, so maybe...
Well-educated, who knows?
Well-educated, maybe. I've heard all kinds of rumors that he might want to be the one that does first contact coming up real soon. Possibly. That's what I'm hearing on the web, on the Vine, people talking about stuff.
What kind of planet is Nibiru? Does it have seas or oceans, or is it...
According to the Lost Book of Enki that Zacharias Sitchin made, it has seas, it has land masses, but it's like about 4 to 8 times the size of our planet, which backs up exactly what NASA originally leaked back in 1983 when they first found it using the brand new infrared telescope they put up. And when they found this thing out there, someone at NASA jumped the gun and had a news conference, said, look at this, we found this thing way out there. It's a huge heat signature, blah, 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 blah. About 2 or 3 days later, NASA pulled the entire story and retracted it. But they kept putting things in scientific journals, and it was being leaked and leaked and leaked and leaked up until a certain point. So the Vatican, okay, President Eisenhower went to Muroc Airfield back in 1954. We know this because Gerald, a guy that was part of the Hearst newspaper newspaper was invited in with Randolph Hearst. He was actually there at Muroc Airfield. The only thing that actually kind of screwed it all up was that Eisenhower personally asked the Bishop of Los Angeles to be his spiritual advisor. So in comes Francis McIntyre. Okay, he's there for the entire thing. And any of these people, they can go to my webpage, starshipsaroundthesun.com, and they can see all the links right there on the front page. It takes them, just walks them right through the whole thing. There's a letter from this one guy, Gerald, who after everything was done, they were all sworn to secrecy. He wrote to his friend down in Southern California, and he completely described everything he saw. Okay, now that stayed within their family for a long time, and a copy of that letter is right there on my webpage. So he's talking about the dematerialization of a solid object, that this hand-picked Western scientist group, they just all had their jaws dropped to the floor when they had it, and he just always remembered it afterwards, because this was 1954.
Sure.
You know, they didn't start talking about transporter beams, dematerialization of anything until Star Trek, 1965. So your listeners can see all the links right there on my webpage. They're all, you can click on each and every single one. So NASA has known that this planet is coming. It's orbiting up from below our system. And that's why, if anyone has been following the news over the last years, you've had one mass animal die off of one after the other, after the other, after the other. The planet's volcanic activity is the strongest it has been in living history. There are more volcanoes either erupting or burping, venting, or like Yellowstone had I think it was a 5-point earthquake recently within the last month or so. Nothing too bad to worry about, but things are slowly starting to tick up. You know, so
there's a spot right off the sun? Is that?
Now the Jesuit priest told Barbato that was either a spaceship or a small orbiting type platform around Nibiru. And you can see they were all copyright 2006 by Mr. Barbato himself. Now all of these images everything was told to his friend Luca Scantamburlo. And Luca went in and actually triple-checked everything he had done, but Barbato did not tell him everything. He kept certain things back because he just didn't want to talk about them. And Luca did a 2-hour interview with Project Camelot, and his interview can be seen on YouTube. It's called The Return of Planet X.
Now, when is it going to come by?
Don't know. Everything's kind of gone quiet now as to what's going on with it. The people down in Australia and New Zealand, they've actually been able to see a reddish-looking something in their skies for almost a year or two now. But they haven't been talking about it anymore. I don't know why. If you also read the Lost Book of Enki, in tablets number 9 and number 10, Enki describes all of what happened here on Earth when Nibiru was coming up from below. All of the earthquakes. They had to place seismic stuff down in what's now called Antarctica, and also in what's now called South Africa, so they could keep what was going on. And in that book, on those 2 tablets, number 9 and number 10, tells exactly what led up to the Great Flood, because they were using it. Enlil was using it to get rid of the humans and the IGGs, which were the Anunnakis who lived on Mars, but they had come down to Earth and grabbed human females. That's where the Book of Enoch comes in. You know, the same type of thing, where the females gave birth to giants, which were nothing more than what we called the gods under Greek and Roman mythology. That's where they were hybrids.
Yeah, it's Book of Enoch and the Apocrypha?
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly. It actually matches a certain part that's in the Book of Enoch, where they talk about what happened then. And there it is right there. This slide is part of a PowerPoint presentation that was created using leaked NASA info in 2009. This shows the 6 planets in the brown dwarf system, and it shows where it's going to be interacting with our system on December 21st, 2012. At that time, Nibiru would be 20 AUs away from swinging through our system between Mars and Jupiter. An AU is astronomical unit, and
Correct.
1 AU is 93 million miles. So 20 times that distance, that's how far it was.
20 times the distance between the Earth and the Sun.
Yes.
Okay.
That's how far they predicted that Nibiru would be from coming through our system. And there's the same pattern that was seen in the black and white DSS image with the something in the center and all the planets orbiting around it. And then also from the leaked computer-enhanced image showing the brown dwarf with its stars, of its planets going around it with the false color. And here we have, compare the two. On the left-hand side is the DSS image I got from a friend in NASA, and on the right is the infrared image showing the brown dwarf and its 5 inner planets. You can see they're almost the same, but taken from different points, because the inner planets have different orbital positions every time. Alien intervention. Why are we not seeing all of the massive solar storms that NASA predicted we would have starting in 2012? New cycle of the sun. We should have had one massive solar storm after the other.
Yeah, it's a 7-year cycle or
11-year cycle.
Okay.
And we should have had a massive, just boom, one storm after the other. But it's been very quiet. I wonder why. Well, you see, one of Soho's other cameras has been filming this other stuff that NASA does not want everyone to know about. They're giant alien space probes that have been seen around our sun now by a camera on Soho for over 6 years. They are controlling our sun's output. Okay? You see, whenever something slides through our system, like a big comet or, say this brown dwarf and its Nibiru, they're on a different frequency, electrical frequency, than what's in our system. NASA's known now for about 20 years or maybe more that there's a electrical pulse between the sun and each planet, and then each planet and their moons, however, whatever. And it's on a certain frequency. When something else comes through, it's on a different frequency, and it starts interacting or affecting all the planets and the two things. And that is what the aliens don't want. Because the last time Nibiru came through our system, it kicked the bleep out of ancient Egypt, as told by Ipawer. Ipawer was a highly trained Egyptian scribe, and during the Exodus, the planet and Egypt had earthquakes, they had this, they had that, and that was all being caused roughly around 1558 BC, the last time Nibiru came through our system. That was the destroyer being seen in the skies. So the aliens don't want the same thing to happen now, because all of our civilizations will go back to, all right? They want us to
progress
further. So they've had these huge space probes all around our sun, and they're making sure it's not doing the same thing this time along.
Why are they being so nice to us?
Well, if these ships are Anunnaki, the ones that I've shown to your listeners for over the time, and I know they're Anunnaki now after talking to Dr. Sasha Lesson and his wife Janet Lesson. I've been on their radio show the last couple of days. They are Anunnaki. No ifs, ands, or buts. Okay? So they're coming here on a daily basis. NASA's ignoring them, and they're helping us. And these alien space probes, if you can go on to the next, we can start seeing these things. There's the two satellites. You've got stereo behind, stereo ahead, and they're on either side of the Earth. And a lot of these satellites, they're the ones that are actually seeing these images as they come in and depart from our system. And there we go. This is stereo behind. And you see all those nice little red arrows pointing to huge alien space probes. These things have been enlarged up. You can see them there on your screen. That's from 2011.
So there's that many at one time around the sun?
Yes. And they're huge. These things are almost the size of the planet Earth. Okay? And NASA does not want anyone to know about these. And half the time they erase the images, but we've been able to catch some of the images showing these things all around our sun. This one's from stereo behind, and you can see some of the images have been enlarged up, and you can see a couple others are orbiting around the sun. Not all of these space probes can be seen in the images. They're not being erased, they just can't be seen because of the angle of the camera looking at them. So I've had to go, I and other friends, we've actually had to go through these very carefully each time. And you can see more of these little space probes. They're standing out away from the sun. So they're there. And your viewers are seeing this for the first time. Most people don't even know where to look for these things.
So these are not camera defects because
they're
on the
not
enlargement?
camera defects. They're not hot shots. These are actually alien space probes that are orbiting our sun. And these are the camera images that clearly show it. This one's what, from 2013?
Yes.
2013? I did a video with third phase of the moon under Bob Evans, and they showed most of these things. It's about a 15-minute video, so you can go onto YouTube and check under third phase of moon, Bob Evans, and you'll see this video showing these are immense. There's something else. And there's some close-ups showing these huge space probes. These are not human-built, they're alien-built. They might have we might have something to do with them.
It appears that they're inside the corona, which...
yeah, well, you know, they're
yeah, that's impressive.
And
they're in orbit.
Exactly, and this is what NASA does not want the people to know about, okay? These things are out there. Here's another one from 2013. You can still see them if you look really close on the outer edges around the sun. You can see these things. One of them's just down to the left, below the sun. You can see one there. They're controlling controlling our sun's output, because our sun's output actually has a lot to do with whether we have earthquakes. Scientists actually know this, where certain parts from the sun, they kind of hit different parts of the earth, and they'll pull something from the earth. I'm no scientist. I'm not going to try. I'm not even going to try to say. But I've been told that it pulls something from the planet's crust. And when they see that happening, they know they've got 7 days. And 7 days there'll be an earthquake right there. There's some more of them right there.
So there are 4 of them in the upper left?
Well, you're seeing part of them right there. You know, like I said, certain angles around it, either they have been cleaned up, maybe they didn't clean them all and they left some in there, or maybe from certain angles only certain ones are being seen, but they're all orbiting the sun. And I'm quite sure those space probes, they also have their own shields up, protecting them from the sun itself too. Otherwise they'd be fried just sitting there.
Yeah. That
close to the sun. There's another one from 2013. These are all NASA pictures, no fakery, no lying. They're all real. And that's another image. You can see a couple of the space probes up in the top left around the sun. And that was actually a SETI. That was a SETI satellite photograph. That's for the U.S. Navy, SECCHI. Because we get these from all the different stereo ahead, stereo behind, SETI, SOHO with the 10 different cameras that are on SOHO. You might as well just put it on the regular news. I mean, you know.
Well, the regular news people wouldn't know what to do with it anyway.
Well, I'm always open to talk to them too.
All they're good at is reading teleprompters.
Well, I've been researching this stuff for so long. There's another one from 2013 with arrows pointing to them. You can see them in the enlargements. That's another stereo ahead. So you got the stereo ahead, stereo behind, looking at the sun from 2 different angles, and they're seeing these over and over and over. I'm sorry, folks. Aliens do exist. UFOs are real. These space probes are real. You can see it right there.
So how far ahead of us are they in technology? If they were around...
Oh, God. Some of the images
they're around over 2,000 years ago, 3,000?
I'm not even going to try to think. Some of the images I've seen of these things, they'll create a gigantic flash and then shoot out of the flash where the camera took the photograph at the exact time. They've got Star Trek technology, and we're back in the going to the moon, you know? There's some more of those things. They're huge. I'm not even going to take a guess at how far ahead they are of us. But they're here, and they're
at least 5,000 years.
They're here. They're here every day. They're talking to someone. Okay, they're talking to someone. So, you know.
And yet, there's another group of people who say, "Well, they've got an underground railroad from maybe Los Angeles to Washington, D.C. and there are
maybe
earthquakes."
They do. Maybe the DUMBs, the deep underground military bases, are all down there. They were built because they knew Nibiru was coming. And they knew Nibiru would do this, this, and this to the planet. But when nothing happened around 2012, December 21st, whoa. Okay, some of the predictions went to 2013, June 1st. Nothing happened. Okay, so yes, I do not know physically what those probes are doing, but those probes are interacting with our sun and stopping what we are all warned would happen. These massive solar storms, this and that. All of the predictions and the prophecies that go back several hundred years for this to happen, that to happen, the Mayan calendar, the Aztec calendar. We all thought we were going to go into the night without a prayer.
Hmm.
We're still here because of alien intervention. They want us here so we can keep climbing upwards. They want to interact with us with our current technology. That's the only thing that makes any sense to me. I'm sorry.
I'm just wondering why, well, we'll just let them get wiped off the face of the earth and then...
Nah.
No.
No.
Then we'll come back and say, hey, this is a nice place to live.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Why else will all these ships be coming here on a daily basis? Are they coming here for Chinese food? For the outback? Come on. Those things are coming from wherever, from Nibiru itself. They're coming over advanced space and coming out of warp or whatever. They're coming here for a reason. Okay? So I don't think they want us to totally destroy ourselves. Look at all the nuclear weapons and stuff that have been turned off by the UFOs.
Yeah, over at Bent Waters, a few other cases, yeah.
And that's because Eisenhower told them back in 1954, if they ever came back, we'd shoot them from the sky. And ever since then, they've been saying, no, don't play with that stuff. You know, we're the ones in charge, where the missile bases, all the stuff turns off whenever they see a UFO flying overhead. They're playing with us.
You think that's why they want a one-world government? Because it's easier to develop, to have negotiations with a planet where there's only one government instead of individual continents?
Just like in the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still, the first one.
Michael Rennie. Yeah.
With Michael Rennie. Who was Klaatu supposed to talk to? The Russians? The British? The Americans? You know, that's why he finally gave up and called all the scientists and said, hey, you know, we came here for a reason, and you guys are just kind of showing off here. If you ever start going into space and taking all that meanness with you, we'll have to come back and, you know, kick your butt. You know, we want you to join our United Nations, which was actually cut out of the film because they didn't want the United Nations mentioned in the original script. But that's why he had that. Okay? So that's probably what the aliens are doing now. Who do we talk to down there? If we talk to the Americans, the Russians get ticked because the Americans are getting technology and they're not. Do we talk to the British, the French, the South Africans? You know, come on.
Maybe the Indians, they have good...
Exactly. The Native Americans, you know, maybe they should just talk to them through their kachinas. Okay? You know, it's about time humanity starts to wake up. Okay? I've always been worried for a long time that we actually were quarantined to our little planet.
Well, we can't get out of the solar system.
Well, true.
We can't even get to Mars yet.
And we kept losing probes going to Mars. Supposedly,
50% of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, kind of like we're quarantined on this little planet, and the aliens are watching us, you know, and that's why we keep firing at them every once in a while, and that's why you see the one great video where, you know, here's this little white spot, and then zoom, and it moves again, then zicks again, up comes a missile or something.
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, that real neat film. Yeah. You know, NASA, with the International Space Station, they're still seeing UFOs all around the space station. Bits and pieces get leaked out saying this is what showed that one time. Now cosmonauts are starting to talk out. Cosmonauts that have a real good reputation behind them, so it's not just, you know, Tom and Jerry. You know, here's cosmonauts talking that they actually see this stuff up there.
Yeah, originally it was Marina Popovich, who was a fighter pilot. Yeah.
You know, the NASA astronauts, they've all got their mouths being, you know, zippered shut because, you know, they like their job. They can't talk about what they see up there.
Except for Buzz Aldrin, slips every once in a while and says, why don't you talk to those guys on the other side of the moon?
I would love to talk to that man, show this man the stuff I've been seeing since 1998. When I latched onto these images and started following them. I have over 3,000 satellite images showing these ships doing one thing or another. Now, the one thing I know your listeners will be interested in, if they've ever read the Anunnaki stories, any of Sitchin's books, from the 12th planet on up, I have over 100 of these images where those ships are seen by NASA firing these immense beams and hitting something. So they're defending our solar system against someone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I've been putting some of these images up on Facebook where you can physically see it. Here it is up in this little tiny corner up here of the LASCO 2 or LASCO 3 camera images, and when it's enlarged up, you can see this huge beam going off to one side or this way or coming down like this. You know,
so they're not clearing the asteroid belt, huh?
No, they're not doing that. They're I don't know what they're firing at. I'll honestly say that I don't know. But when I showed these images to a military type person, can't say his rank or whatever, he had them analyzed. He said that beam had immense electrical or energy power behind it. So it wasn't someone sending a CB radio to someone else, just beam it out to them. These things were immense. And these ships that are firing these things are the size of our planet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So they're ticked off at somebody out there that's not doing what they're being told. So I don't know. But I know what these images show.
I remember a number of shows back, years back, that we had a remote viewer on, and she was referring to the colonizers, that there was a species that went through different solar systems and just basically raided their natural wealth, their mineral wealth.
Kind of like the movie Independence Day, where the aliens came and they were going to try and clean Earth of everything they wanted, and they were just taking care of all the humans. Yeah. Possible. I mean, when we were talking the other night on the Dr. Sasha lesson, it's more than likely the Anunnaki were not the only ones here on the planet.
That's true. There's probably been several.
Yeah. So they all kind of tolerated each other, and that's why you've got these huge reptilian-looking ones. You've got ones that look like big ants type things that going back through through history and stuff. So, if your listeners can go to my webpage, www.starshipsaroundthesun.com, they'll see I have 19 of these images on my webpage. They can actually look at them, and they can see exactly what I'm talking about. And they can also check all the links from Eisenhower onwards, where they can actually go to the websites and read exactly what I've had to research for the last 10 years almost now. So,
yeah, it's interesting. Even if they're translations of the Upanishads, when people say, "Hey, that looks like a similar description to atomic war or nuclear weapons being thrown around."
Over in ancient India, they're talking about these huge missile type things that, in their time they were saying it was this, but looking back, that was just a guided missile. No, this guy's got some kind of a ray gun,
He rides around over the Arnhem with his chariot, his flying chariot.
Or the Vimana from ancient India. Alexander the Great had his forces stopped by the Vimana twice.
Oh, I remember that, yeah.
Of the golden shields that came down and scared his forces, and then actually helped him the second time, where they actually fired what looked like a beam or something, destroying the fortifications of this other group of people they were invading.
Yeah.
So,
maybe they were blue people with 4 arms after all.
They might have. I mean, there's all kinds of stories of shapeshifters, so maybe they shifted into a different shape and color and they were in charge, and when they weren't in public, they changed back to whatever they were. Who knows? That's where all this stuff is coming from.
Yeah, it's interesting supposition, if we ever find the truth. But
Yeah.
Who's going to tell us the truth?
Nobody. But that's why I've been trying to get this information out to everyone I can.
Mm. Let them decide the truth for themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Instead of just telling them. I show them the images. I say, I don't know what this is, but here is something I know is happening, and I know these things match these things from ancient Iran, Iraq, or the Sumerian times, and they're the same ships that were coming through. And they're Anunnaki. I'm sorry. They are Anunnaki. The same race that used to be here 450,000 years ago. If you listen and read the books that Zachariah Sitchin wrote.
It's interesting if this planet was populated back then. Well, you're going to have to come back again. And for further information, you may contact Bob Evans Jr. at his website, starshipsaroundthesun.com. His phone number is 650-922-1438. And his email is bobevans919@yahoo.com. And if you wish to see more shows of this type, keep those cards and letters coming. You may contact us here at Space Cities, P.O. Box 487, Mountain View, California, 94042. Well, thank you again for returning.
And thank you for having me back on your show.
And this is Steve Naj signing off for Space Cities.